This section of the third-person 3D action game will cover the interaction between enemies and the player by dealing damage with one another with health points. As you can see in the game screen, there is a health bar on the user interface on the top left of the screen. And there is also a health bar for the enemy in the very far distance. To put a health bar on an enemy that is independent to the player's screen, since this in player UI in the inspector, this is a render mode, a screen space overlay based on the camera. For the camera player, this camera over here, the camera, you are going to put a canvas on a small canvas on the game object you wish to put UI on. The UI will not be shown in game and will be shown depending on the player. So if you hover over zombie bar, you can see that the render mode is world space, meaning it depends on the world space in the game. So going back to the health bar, we first need to go to the canvas of the entire game. So we go into the player user interface. So to see a better view of it, we can put in this perspective and we see that there is a health bar. To put a health bar there, one must first go to the UI and image. Okay, then we can name it into bar. Afterwards, we can adjust it, put it somewhere, let's say on top. And it's important that we use an image because the image will be used for the manipulation of the health fill amount. So we use orange here. And we change the image type into filled. Afterwards, this makes it so that the image will increase and decrease based on the fill amount on the right here. We change the fill method, so horizontal and from the left. Now, if we lower the fill amount, it's going to lower like a health bar in the game. Here we go. So that's how you put that's how you put an image on the UI and make it so that it's like a health bar. So note that this option in the component can be manipulated through the code, which we'll get into in a bit. So we'll delete this for now and notice that there are two health bars. One is green, one is orange. That when it decreases, you can see that the maximum health bar and the current health bar in comparison. So let's go to the code. For health script. For health script, there is several things. The health, max health, 100 float. We're using float because it's better to calculate percentage. And for the current health, which is there. And then for the UI references, it's going to be the health bar game object, which is the image and the image component of the game object. And the animator as well, but we'll get to this in a bit. First, we call the animator component from the game object and turn the current HP into a max health. And the update update health UI, and there's the update health UI. So this is important. So let's go to that first. Update health UI. What this does is it gets the health percent, which divides the current health by the max health. And this becomes the fill amount that goes into the image component of the sprite. So here, if it is 50%, 50 over 100, that's 50%. It's going to reflect here. So 100 divided by 50. Sorry, 50 divided by 100. It's 50%. So, going back, every time health is decreased or increased, it updates. Next is a public method called take damage with the parameter of damage amount. What this does is it gets it subtracts the current damage based on the parameter to the current health of the character with the health script and immediately updates the health bar points. There's also another method being called once the current health of the character is below or equal to 0, called die. There's also a debug log in order to check if the method is called and properly used. Next is the die. For the die method, it uses the death animator trigger, which calls the animator trigger for death, which is the death animation, which was previously mentioned in another video for animations, and it destroys the game object after 3 seconds. So the game destroy game object. The first argument is what is destroyed, particularly the object itself. So if the player was part of the object, it will destroy itself, and the amount of time it takes before it blows itself up. There's also a heal method just in case for debugging purposes. So now let's go to the attack script. So for the attack script, there's a lot of things to keep note, but for the serialized field is there to show these values and adjust them in the edit inspector. But things you need to keep in mind are is player attack and attack cooldown. There's also the ignore tag, and the required click for player, and the collider. So first of all, attack script does not use void update because it only the script only calls methods when certain conditions are true, which is the player, which is, for example, when an AI can attack, we go for the AI first. So AI attack. This means attack script can go to both the player and the computer controlled game objects. So for AI attack, it will go to check for hits, which will go to first. Check for hits uses the use trigger. Use trigger if it is true, meaning if the trigger for the collider, which signifies the area that deals damage. So here we go to the zombie, right? The zombie has a boxed collider over here. It's green. This box collider over here, it symbolizes the collider for the attack collider. So if a character, let's say the player character, is in this box, then the computer controlled character will deal damage to it. How, me say? It will go to the check for hits, and what's important here is that the attack script calls the target game object within the collider. After that, the whatever object is inside the collider will be checked if it has a health script component. With the health script component, as you mentioned a while ago, we have the take damage method. So whenever an attack is done in the attack collider area, it's going to call that method equal to the damage amount, which is set in the very start. Damage amount, so 10, ideally. And then then a debug log will also input the amount of damage done to what and what is damaged. So attack script does not need an update method. This goes the same for player attack. So when a player attacks, it'll left click. So here in the update, whenever the character or the player left clicks, it'll cast player attack. So can attack is another it is a method that uses a cooldown feature where it will see whether or not it returns a boolean variable, true or false. So if the amount of time to attack is shorter than the cooldown, it will not attack. This is to prevent players from spamming left click to deal damage. And then it will check for hits and it will say the player is attacked. Same goes, checking for anything hits in the area. The player also has a box collider which shows the area that deals damage. So here, directly in front of the player. So after this, with all these effects, we go to the game itself and we can see if it reflects. So here, you can see from the scene view that the object, the player has a box slider there, and you can also see that there is a when we move closer to the zombie, we deal damage to it, 50% of this HP, and then we do attack it again. It does its death animation and dies after 3 seconds. So there is the death animation, and when it's 0 HP, it dies and destroys itself. Notice that the player also has lowered its HP, and it's also reflected in the inspector on the right over here. So that goes for the interaction between player and enemy controlled, computer controlled characters.